Hello again and welcome back. I'm Saeed, a DevOps engineer and a certified Kubernetes enthusiast. You can find me right here on this YouTube channel. Follow me on X at SaeedF0 and LinkedIn as Saeed. All of the links will be down below. And if you find any value in any of these videos, I'd highly appreciate you subscribing and commenting down below where you're from. And yeah, be sure to link up, connect up, and come and say hello. So in this question here, we're looking at image policy webhooks or webhook. I know we've previously looked at it before in the previous season. But yeah, studying for the CKS, wanting to learn about Kubernetes security is important to, revisit topics. And I must admit, image policy webhooks for me were quite challenging, were quite a challenging concept to grasp. So there's no harm in revisiting. So I'm gonna let you guys pause and read the question, and I've already read it. So yeah, cool. So hopefully you've paused the video, you've played it back. Now you're ready after reading the entire question. Here we've got a question and a few points that's been broken down to, a few steps rather. So we're told to initially create a new admission configuration file at this path. The kubeconfig file with the credentials to connect to the webhook server is located at this path. And it's given us an important note saying that the directory root CKS image policy has already been mounted on the kube API server at this path. So it's telling us to use this path to reference the admission configuration. Now that's very, very important. The fact that we've got a directory and that directory has been mounted on the kube API server at this path. So it's telling us to actually use the path reference of the admission configuration. So what that means is we've got a concept called volumes and volume mounts. And I must admit, for me, that was quite a difficult concept to grasp initially. But it's nothing but storage for your Kubernetes containers or your pods. So there are different types of volumes, and this is resource allocation. Where is your container getting that resource, that storage, resource from? You could have it getting it from a Azure disk, an Azure file. You can have it coming from a empty directory, and in our case, we've got host path. But I'll let you guys read up more about that in your own time. If you like, I could plug the documentation in the comments below. If you are interested, let me know. I could also make a separate video on that. But if we go to our Kube API server, we'll be able to actually see it in action. So here we've got the volume. You can see the concept volumes and we've got volume mounts. So if we look for the one that we've got, it's the admission controllers. And we can see on the host path, we've got root, CKS, image policy, right? And the host path volume basically mounts the file or even a directory in some cases from the host node's file system into your pod. So the corresponding uh, file or path location or yeah, just path generally in your container would have a different path, but it's effectively coming from that initial host path, if that makes sense. Hopefully that does. But if it doesn't, it's fine. You can let me know and we could look more in detail about that. So, going back to our question, let's head over into the host path, the directory that we're going to be creating the admission configuration file, and that is here. If we cd into root and then CKS and then image policy, we clear the screen. If we hit ls, we can see that the admission kube config file has been created, which is nice. But we want our admission configuration file initially. So let's create that first. It will come from an empty file. And of course, with it being empty, we need to populate that with the template. So we're going to go to image policy webhook. And once we find that page, we're going to scroll down to the same template that you'd use. I've used it before, so I know where it is. So you copy this template here. This is the one that you want. And then we want to paste that in there. And we want to reference the kube config file. The template comes with a placeholder for that, but you need to obviously, get the correct path in there. We're going to use the path that we have as a volume mount path, as a volume mount, not the one for the host path, but the one we have as the mount path. Right. So this is, the the location of the file within the container or the pod. Cool. We want the kube config file. So we're gonna get out of that for a moment, and we're gonna hit ls, and let's just grab the admission kube config, the name of it, and then go back into that. There we go. We paste that in there, and then point or step 3 says make sure that if the latest tag is used, the request must be rejected at all times. That sounds like a default deny, and here we've got default allow, and it's by default it's set to true, but that's not what we want. We want it to obviously result to default deny. So once we've got that, we're happy with the kube config files path, and also it's set to default deny. We're going to get out of there, and just before we do anything else, we're going to check the kube config, the admission kube config, just to see if all of the flags have been correctly populated, and that looks good to me. Nice. So from that respect, it's all good. Now we need to enable the admission controller. So we're going to go back to our Kube API server and scroll up, and we need to populate 2 places. One, we need to enable the Kube, we need to enable the admission plugin, and that's just above here. So we've got enable admission plugins. At the moment it's set to only allow the node restrictions or node restriction, but we want to also allow image policy webhook. So we'll just copy that and place it just there like that. And oops. And we'll take, there you go, admission control config file. We'll snatch that flag right there, and we'll paste that in there as well. And again, we're going to be referencing the location, the mount path, as opposed to the host path. That's why, although we created the admission configuration in this path here, we're going to reference it here because of what we spoke about a moment ago, where we have, so this is where we created it, but the corresponding path within the container is where we're referencing it from. So hopefully that makes more sense. So we're going to get out of that Kube API server. We're going to give it a moment because, of course, it does take a moment. Once you tamper with that Kube API server, it does take a moment. CTO PS. So we'll give that a minute. Cool, that's fine. Grep Kube API. Yeah, it's just resetting or restarting rather, which is cool. We'll just give that a few minutes. And yeah, in the meantime, it may be worth mentioning that this is the final episode of this season. There is one more episode before we get into some more some different, we explore different type of content around DevOps and toolings and roadmaps and the likes. So yeah, if you've got any suggestions at all, then be sure to comment them down below, and of course, yeah, reach out on any of my uh, network or social network links in the description box. Right, let's check if that's back, and it is. Yeah, there you go. So that is now back. The kubeAPI server is back, which means we configured it correctly and all is well. A general practice would be to save a backup of the kubeAPI server, but I didn't bother with this question because here as we can see, it says that in any case, please restore the kubeAPI server using the backup file. So they've already created the backup file for us here, but in the exam, it's more than likely that may not be the case. So it's important that you do save your own backup files of that kubeAPI server, because if that does crash, you are in big trouble. There are a lot of cases where in the CKS exam, you're given up to 15 to 16 questions, and it's more than likely that you have more than one question on one cluster. And that one cluster is, of course, only got one kubeAPI server, and that's what would lead to both clusters crashing and in turn missing out on, more marks than you may have anticipated. So yeah, I'll make some more content, maybe a different video about my experiences with the different Kubernetes exams, and we'll save that for another time. But for now, the question isn't over because here we've got a final step, and that's to delete the existing pod in the Magnum namespace. Okay, get called app, and it says to recreate it using the tag 1.27. So let's YAML, and let's pipe that in here, a pod.yaml. So let's cat that just to make sure that that's there. So we've got the pods manifest template pulled down locally. Now I'm going to delete the pod using the same trick that we looked at in the last question, which was to delete the pod using its own YAML file. And that's done. Let's triple check that. Yep, it's not there anymore. So now let's recreate that pod, but let's upgrade the image or update the image. 1.27 is the tag that it would like us to have or to add. And now once we've got that, we create that pod. Just to validate that pod, okay, get pods in that Magnum namespace, right? YAML grep image, just to check if that image has been updated. Yep, it has. And that concludes the final question. So yeah, if you stuck around this far, thank you very much. And also, yeah, do comment down below any sort of suggestions that you'd like to see, any other kind of content you'd like me to explore. It will predominantly be Kubernetes initially, and then hopefully we can branch out a little bit more a little bit later.